Welcome, welcome to Now You Know Destiny. You are joined by this fire team of 3. We have the man who punches everything, our Titan lover and background screenwriter, HipNuts, and our hunter with the beats, LostAngelofHavik. And you have your fire team leader, the Warlock main with half a plan, Vulshok.
Welcome, Guardians. Last week we covered the Golden Age and the Traveler's arrival to the Sol system, the collapse, and the subsequent fallout that had on humanity and its territories, the Dark Age and how Guardians eventually rose up to reclaim those wastes left in the collapse, and the City Age, the eventual building of the last safe home for humanity. Vulshok, you want to cover what we'll be going over this week?
Yes, we'll be covering the City Age, all the way to when the Guardian first revives, and hopefully some of our own journey inside the game. The City Age is a bit of a not exact time, because there's a old Grimoire card of the City Age from Destiny 1. It says no one really knows where the City Age began. Was it when the walls were built, when Six Fronts happened, or Twilight Gap? It's not an exact date. All we know is the City Age started around this time.
Yeah, and that's fair, because in a post-collapse civilization, timekeeping is going to be one of the last things on your mind.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but they do have the Cryptarch, who is devoted to information and decrypting crap. So you would think that they would kind of keep track, at least since the consensus is formed at what we consider the earliest time of the City Age. They have record keeping, very, very proper record keeping in the consensus. So at least from the beginning of the City Age, they kept track of time.
Yeah, there's a record of, I guess you could say, litigation in the city. So you could use that as a sort of rough framework for whenever actual civilization became organized again.
Mm-hmm. As a side note, the consensus is, I would say, in a group with a speaker at the head. You have the Vanguard, the Lord Shax, of course. You can't have him without Lord Shax, and representatives of various factions all weighing in their opinions. I believe it is the top 3 factions in the city that get a seat at the table.
I believe so.
Yeah. Whenever the Concordat was excommunicated, that was where Future War Cult's spot opened up. Before then, they were not able to.
Oh, yeah. It's sometime after the Faction Wars, which...
Correct.
Is the Faction Wars really ground in? Faction Wars was the reason the consensus was created by the speaker. And the Pilgrim Guard was the predecessors to what we now call Guardians. So now that we have the consensus formed, the speaker taking heads, stopping the faction wars, stopping Risen from taking sides for power, money, for support, this is when the time of the Guardians truly begins.
Right, and this is the point where Risen and Lightbearers were redubbed, or I guess more organizationally referred to as Guardians as opposed to the formers. Now, there are still those who bear the light that are referred to by Lightbearer, but those are typically Guardians who aren't really aligned or fight for the city.
Mm-hmm. Risen would be considered... Yeah, Risen would be considered anyone who was freshly revived and most likely has not made it to the city. Light bearers, like the Drifter, are anyone who uses the light but not aligned with the tower. Guardians are for Risen, who specifically protect the last city. Iron Lords, they kind of defended the city, but at the same time, they were more of a mobile justice force in the Dark Age.
It's still probably most apt to say that the Iron Lords were probably the very first iteration of what Guardians would later become.
Oh yeah, if it was iterations of what Guardians would become, it would be Iron Lords, the Titan faction of Pilgrim Guard, and then Guardians themselves.
Correct.
Yep. But with this faction wars finally calmed down, the construction of the city walls finally began, which we saw a nice little peek at the Destiny 2 premiere event, where Zavala, Ikora, and many prominent members of the city helped build the walls.
Yeah, you actually get a nice shot of Ikora floating by with a giant slab of concrete or some other rock.
She loves floating.
As all warlocks.
Oh yeah,
Floofers.
would you not? Why
I
wouldn't
mean,
you fly?
I would
Not a fan of the
prefer
flute, bro.
a more reliable jump, but that's just me.
But I mean,
Hunter gang.
if you
No
can
shade.
fly, why jump?
Because it's not as Buzz Lightyear put it, it's not flying. What was it? It's falling with style.
Neither is jumping.
It's falling with style.
And what we just got in the new Grimoire book about was it Fallen Kingdoms? I believe it's the title of this volume 2.
Yes.
There's actually an image in there of early city, last city.
Really?
And do you remember in Destiny 1 where you could see like the weird placement of the wall?
Mm-hmm.
Where it seemed to be like there were two walls between the tower it was attached to. You had the tower
right.
that you had the wall the tower is attached to, and the wall behind that, still separating the tower from the city. What the image showed was that was the first wall that was built, and that was right. It's like it was a 6 fronts image, and it showed that single, like I would say very sharp oval wall surrounding it. So it's now forest land. They probably renovated it after they expanded the city, but that was the size of the city then.
It makes sense. You'd want to grab a foothold first before you went and extended that large. And I'm sure as word spread that a fortified location had been secured, it would have drawn in more and more people, thus giving you more manpower and a bigger need to extend.
Yeah, but building such a large target did come with some bad side effects because the Battle of 6 Fronts began.
Yes.
It was the first coordinated attack of Fallen against the city. Before, it was just like, different houses probing it, mainly the devils or the kings. But this time, multi-house cooperation to fight the Guardians.
It was supposed to be all of the known
No,
houses.
right?
Right?
All the fallen houses was Twilight Gap.
Oh, okay.
That's not 6 Fronts is really where the Titan faction shined. Because there's a reason called the Battle of 6 Fronts. It's because 6 fronts were fought, and not a single Titan rally retreated.
Yeah.
They held their ground the entire time. No Fallen made it past them to the city.
And actually, one thing I appreciate, and this is one of the things that I love that Destiny does in general, there's always these little nods in the symbolism that they use. The Titan emblem that you see, that split apart hexagon, is actually representative of the Titan orders that fought and where in the battle they fought, because it was the two larger orders at the time took the flanks, took the left and right flanks, and then the northern and southern flanks were guarded by the smaller orders. I forget what the orders were.
One of them had to be Pilgrim Guard, because Pilgrim Guard is still one of the largest Titan factions in game.
Right.
But with the and this also, the Battle of 6 Fronts is really where Osiris was like debuted as a very powerful guardian, along with Sate 14, Shax, Saladin, Zavala, all of them. I mean, like it sounds like the Titans really shone during that, along with the Pilgrim Guard, because afterwards, Osiris was head of the Vanguard, because he was the first Vanguard commander. I believe at the time it was Tallulah Fairwind as the Hunter Vanguard. But
yes.
There has been at least 4 Hunter Vanguards since then. There was a new name, added recently. I would have to check on that on a later date as an amendment, but there's 4 to my knowledge at the moment. And Saint 14 was the head of the Titan Vanguard.
Right.
I actually just grabbed those 5 orders, and they were Firebreak, First Pillar, Pilgrim Guard, Stoneborn, and Sun Legion, with a notable exception to the Sunbreakers, who were mercenaries for hire, eventually exiled.
Yes, because they had opposing ideas. They basically followed Osiris. And
Yeah,
as we come in later,
and
Osiris
pretty much
gets
everything
exiled.
regarding Osiris was ousted from the tower. But anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself.
And this was Osiris became Vanguard commander. Ikora became his pupil, and then the great Ahamkara hunt begins
Before
soon after.
that,
Because
there's actually an interesting tidbit that you can grab in Destiny 2's Tower Hangar. If you head to one of the sides and climb a few parkour stunts, you can grab a scannable that will mention that even though Osiris was the first of the Warlock Vanguard, his time was actually very short. And to see one pass so quickly, I think it's worth mentioning.
Yeah.
yeah. With the time of the City Age being so underprepared, under-resourced, and everything, they were like brand new. Many Guardians approached Ahamkara for information, and as the Ahamkara do, they granted the wishes, but there's always a twist. And before anything truly bad happened, the speaker issued an order to kill all Ahamkara in sight in the entire solar system before their threat became truly great.
And actually, it was the Awoken and Queen Mara who, I want to say it was an agreement between the Awoken and the city to have their assistance in the Great Ahamkara Hunt, and we were actually gifted weaponry designed to help us eliminate the Ahamkara. I know she was kept a secret, but
yes,
the assistance was garnered and arranged by Mara to protect her secret of Riven.
Well, the way Mara saw it is the Ahamkara were a great power, and if all of them but one were killed, she would be the only one with this power.
Right.
Yeah, Mara is nothing if not all about collecting trump cards.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's the only reason why she helped the Guardians during this time was because she wanted to make sure she had the advantage in case something happened. She would have the only Ahamkara known in existence left. And Riven became the only known Ahamkara left in the system to Mara.
Unfortunately, to her detriment.
Yes. I mean,
what
she got
could
some
go
good
wrong?
perks out of it.
I mean, what could go wrong? I'm going to just have this all-powerful, reality-altering dragon.
I just have a wish
shift.
dragon. It's no big deal.
This is not a problem. This will never be a problem. Ain't no problem.
But with the Ahamkara hunt, they began hunting them, killing them. Notable members like Shax, Takeo, Praydeth, Kabir, Eris, Ariana,
Ikora.
Almost all of the names we know that have been involved in some tragedy or power, or they're powerful, was involved with the Great Ahamkara Hunt at the time.
And I think it's important to note the tragedy aspect of that.
Yes.
Because and I think it was one of the funnest parts of Forsaken for me was actually going through the raid armor and reading those stories. So I definitely suggest if any of you Guardians out there do take an interest. I know it gets a little tedious reading the lore in game, but hey, if you're running Last Wish or you've run it and you've gotten those armor pieces, take a look at those lore tabs.
The Great Ahamkara stuff is a great read, especially when you know what happens to some of them. Because, for example, with Kabir's Fireteam, Praydeth was hunting Ahamkara with them, and he wished for just a moment that the hunt would never end. And then he hears some static on the radio. And then, after the hunt is over, Him, Kabir, and Praedyth, Kabir, and Pahanin. The three of them went to the Vault of Glass to venture in and defeat what was ever in there. Sadly, it did not go very well. Kabir was lost to the vault. He was one of the last ones to survive and became the Aegis shield that we use in the Vault of Glass raid encounter to defeat Atheon and the Templar.
That was a very sad read in the lore, if I do say so myself.
Yeah.
I found it impressive, though.
Very impressive, and again, fascinating. I remember reading the lore and I was thinking to myself how we go into the vault later. I'm like, there's actual documented history of people going in there and not coming out, and we're going to go in there.
Oh, yeah.
But Kabir became the Aegis shield. He he used what was left of his light along with Vex Tech in there and kind of ramshackled it all together into what we eventually used to go back in there and defeat the Vex. And then it was Praedyth who actually gets written out of time and placed in a Vex prison within the Vex timeline.
They trap his, I would say, essence into a Vex time pocket.
Right.
To be used for a later date because they knew they needed him for a future event which involving the Taken, we will cover later. And then Pahanin, the hunter, actually survived by escaping the vault, but he was forever traumatized by the experience. He was so convinced that everything became a Vex simulation that he crafted a gun called the Super Good Advice that had an AI inside just to talk to him.
And that was actually part of its perk as well, where I forget how the intrinsic read, but it basically remember where your bullets were going and where you were firing, so it would automatically transmat ammo that was lost or missed shots back into your chamber so you could land the shot where you're aiming. I thought that was amazing.
That was the way they explained the mulligan for that gun. Very interesting, I must say.
Another guardian who wished too hard was Shinobu of Shinobu's Vow. Wished that they could see their mother again. And the Ahamkara took on the shape of their mother, and they literally had to go through the process of killing their mother.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's some real crazy stuff. To end with this last section of Great Ahamkara Hunt, Lord Saladin. My God. You know why he's called Dragon Slayer?
I'm guessing because he slayed dragons.
He wished on Ahamkara to become an old fire-breathing dragon of the medieval time mythology.
Smart man. That's the type of dragon I have.
Aphrodite said, "Why would you wish for an actual dragon?"
I didn't believe Lord Saladin's response was, "Are we not knights?" And I thought in that moment,
Titans
awesome.
being Titans.
Beautiful man.
Oh yeah. Titans may not be the smartest breed out there, but they are.
I like the taste of my crayons.
I'd say I'd want to add a minor note just because for me, I remember reading about the Great Ahamkara Hunt in Destiny 1, and I just felt like it was just kind of a matter of humans just being humans and, wanting to kind of just exterminate something an animal that seems dangerous. But then when you get all this lore and you realize the power of just look into, I won't go into it in super detail, but if you read the lore tab for Azerim, it's in the Dreaming City lore book. It's called Azerim, and it actually tells the story of an Ahamkara that essentially coerced an entire group of people to walk off a cliff.
Yeah.
So
he was Azerim was a bag of something, I tell you what.
Yeah, he was a monster, and I think that particular lore book greatly kind of explained how dangerous Ahamkara were to warrant
They were
their
very
extinction.
subtle.
Yeah,
They were very subtle in their manipulations.
and they were seductive.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. What that ending with the great Ahamkara hunt, Riven was the only one left. What the city did not know at the time, so they believed them all extinct. But the interesting thing about Ahamkara is even after their death, their bones will whisper.
And you can still use them to make wishes.
That's actually what Eris carries around with her.
Yes. I always thought it was a piece of Hive.
As did I.
I actually thought it was her ghost until I read the Cloak of the Great Hunt.
I never thought it was her ghost. I thought it was just a shard of Hive material that allowed her to communicate with the Hive magic network. But the Ahamkara does make a good explanation as well.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we got
I wonder
that
as to the exact nature of her wish, since she's able to use Hive spells.
So
she can use Hive spells because of Toland, though.
Yeah. So her wish was, I want to say her, because it's never really kind of written out what she wished for. It just ends with, I clutched the bone, and I found that my eyes were burning from the viscous fluid coming down from them. I could not see, but suddenly I knew the way out. So I'm assuming that she wished to either survive or be able to get out of the Hellmouth alive.
Now that would be interesting if she chose the word survive, because that doesn't necessarily have a time limit on it, and that could explain how let's just say necessary.
Anyone getting Code Geass Suzaku vibes from this?
Yeah.
Well, with the Ahamkara dead, and not much happened with it. The city became stabilized, minor skirmishes here and there, but there was one man, one Titan, who decided to venture to the moon, because he believed no matter what he did, the moon was a great threat, and if he thought he alone could defeat it. His name was Rezel Azir.
What he found there really set the culture for hunters and guardian lore moving forward for probably the entirety of their order.
It's our claim to fame, man.
I
mean, no. You would not know.
What is a hunter these days without the legend of Rezel Azir, Dredgen Yor, and Jaron Ward?
I mean, it would be better.
I mean, I think that
it would be less of a stain.
But the hunter legend isn't about how one person fell; it's how a group rose up.
Right.
But I'm saying having Rezel Azir directly attached to the class hunter.
Oh no, I don't mean as their legacy.
No.
I mean as the thing that they stopped.
Right. And also, to be fair, I mean, there's the entire story of Rezel Azir becoming Dredgen Yor and everything that followed with it, the infamous last word and Thorntail. I think that, you know, it's a great, it's like an old Western, you know what I mean? It's beautifully tragic, you know, and the way we get that culmination in Destiny 2 is amazing. But it's infamous, and it's very bloody, and I'd say it's tragically beautiful for both classes involved. It's forced both hunters and titans to kind of look at their, you know, pillars, their heroes in a different light, you know.
Yeah, I don't think it's about what was lost. I think it's about the path that they took to reclaiming those titles and really cementing themselves for the future. I think it'd be a stain if it were people that they looked up to that fell from that grace. But
it is a good point.
Yeah,
I would like to, if I could Hive-ish, kind of take a Hive-ish twist on it, I would like to say that it's about unmaking and reformation, you know?
Well, yeah. What Rezel Azir did was he separated the legend of him as a Titan as far as he could when he became Dredgen Yor, because he didn't want people to know the man, the legend, and what he became.
Actually, Rezel, it's actually mentioned in a few cards. Rezel wasn't too well known. He was
No, he wasn't.
He was a good average guardian with a good average gun who, in all honesty, kind of fell to the darkness due to his own weakness. And I don't say that as a jab. I say that as, like, if you're not mentally prepared for it, you will be consumed.
Yeah, yep.
It is. It's because of the darkness, it's suffocating,
But to explain his fall would be to describe his journey to the moon.
This is true.
Yes, he went to the moon. I believe he went into the temple of Crato and encountered a wizard.
Zyor the Unwed was the name.
So, after this fight, uses the bones to attach to his weapon.
Of a Hive Knight, I believe.
I imagine
Yes.
there was quite a lot of Hive viscera left over from that fight.
Yeah, he killed a lot.
Any fight with the Hive on the moon is going to end up messy.
Yeah, I mean, he ran
yeah.
out of ammunition, and the last few that he killed before he pulled out his hand cannon was with the butt of his auto rifle.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally described how he beat a thrall to death, and he was like covered in just the ash and soot of their remains. It was crazy.
I would love that auto rifle. I would love it. I would not have it.
So he prevails, and then you immediately see the moment that he falls whenever he decides that the bones of his enemies are worth using alongside his light. And once
It's a very hunter tactic.
Once he decides
to use
that,
what you have around you,
his fate is practically sealed.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Because he returns. He doesn't kill the wizard, I believe, but he returns to Earth, and he slowly becomes a different man.
He becomes a different man who has a completely different perspective on things.
Almost like a switch in a way. Rezlazir lowered his guard and allowed the internal persona of Dredgen Yor to rise up and take over. And then from then on, he was no longer a Titan. He became Dredgen Yor the Hunter.
The same hubris that led him to the moon thinking he could defeat whatever lied there is the same hubris that allowed him to succumb to the whispers that he encountered when he returned.
Right.
The Hive, to continue on with the powers of the Hive, we have the Battle of the Burning Lake, which was our real first fight with the Hive. Lord Shaxx warned the city of against the attack because he told them the power of Hive swords. It would cut a Guardian down and most cases you couldn't revive them anymore. But they ignored his warnings and fought, and Guardians died because of it.
Well, it was actually the battle. It was the actual Battle of Burning Lake that led him to that discovery, and then he burst into the consensus chamber, and Shaxx, being Shaxx, literally pleaded with them loudly, I'm assuming, and yelling as Shaxx does, and basically said, "We need to do some research on these Hive swords because I've never seen anything like this. They behave differently as weapons." And
do you think this is why he took our race lighter from us?
I want that
I
back.
believe that this is
I
why.
want my Dark Drinker back.
Yeah, I want all those back.
I want
but
Tom
I
back.
do believe that this was where the idea was birthed. This point was why the idea was. But again, as Vol put it, the consensus did not listen. They believed wholeheartedly in the power of Guardians, so they amassed this enormous force of Guardians. It was the largest military offensive of Guardians ever.
Thousands of Guardians.
Right, and
we're involved.
like think about what 9 of us do in escalation protocol or blind well, and so you just multiply that by thousands, and
Oh, yeah.
they send this force to the moon, and we go and we're guardians. We push the hive back, and everything's going good, and then Crota
Ooh, it takes a turn, I
gets
tell you.
summoned. And
It was the Battle of Mer Imbrium, which is also known as the Great Disaster.
the Great Disaster, which I'm sure many of you are now becoming very familiar with.
Oh yeah, thanks to the lost ghosts surrounding the moon and Shadowkeep, the stories from Eris of her Fireteam.
This is the Great Disaster is arguably where things take a turn for Eris.
Oh yeah.
And many others. But yeah, Crota was summoned, and there were legendary guardians involved in this fight. Wei Ning, Ariana 3, Eris was there. And literally hundreds of them fell to Crota alone.
Oh yeah.
His sword would literally cut their light from them. And when
The
it was
interesting thing is Ariana and Eris were not at that part of the battle. They had actually captured a wizard, and Ariana was kind of torturing her for information, and that's where the wizard gave Ariana a view of Crota slaughtering guardians in live feed, like straight as it was happening.
of Crota killing Wei Ning, who was also
Was it Wei Ning? I thought it was just Crota killing all the guardians of Merimbrium.
No, I believe it was Wei.
Okay.
If I remember,
So it was a future.
correctly.
Okay, I must correct myself. It was a future vision of when they go into the Hellmouth to defeat Crota. Self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. Then.
Yeah,
Then Wei Ning.
it was messy. It was messy. I think after that point, after the Great Disaster, the consensus essentially was like, no, we're not going back to the moon.
Oh yeah, the moon was quarantined. No one was allowed on the moon ever again by Vanguard policies, and the city retreated.
We lost big time.
The only reason why Crota did not continue his campaign was because he lost some tributes due to some knights fighting off in the distance days prior, and with a lack of consistent tribute, he decided to hibernate in his throne worlds so his worm would not consume him.
Yes.
Which, I mean, saved us greatly.
Thank you, worm.
Yeah, it's interesting to note that one of the reasons we did defeat Crota so easily over and over and over, looking at you, chasm jumping sword warlocks,
Yeah.
is that he wasn't receiving the correct tribute, and had he still been, that might have gone very differently.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just pull the Ethernet cable out, we'll win.
Nah. So let me clarify. We still would have killed him, but he might have been more than a glorified Nightfall. There.
Yeah.
Shots fired.
You have a point.
But I mean, I've always been Mari Ibrium. Anything having to do with that or the first Crato Fireteam is actually the moment where I knew Destiny had me, because it was literally Mylan's Eris video was the first lore video I ever watched, and that was the point where I was like, okay, I'm hooked. I'm in this for the long haul. So, and actually, it was actually when I met you, Vol, and when we started talking, I commented on your on one of your cards about the first Crota Fireteam.
I gotta say, I don't remember that.
It was.
It was like 2 years ago, man.
Yeah, man. A lot's happened since then.
A lot of stuff has happened.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. After the Great Disaster and the city retreating, Dredgen Yor is still kind of, wandering around the earth. He travels to a town called Palamond, where Jaron Ward was kind of stationed. Yor killed everyone in the town, and Jaron Ward escorted the survivors. But then later encountered Dredgen again, and let's just say Jaron is not really Han Solo levels capable.
Well, we have to make note first. Yours carrying around a fully formed thorn at this point. And if I remember correctly, Jaron shoots first. But because
it wasn't strong enough, because there was no golden gun at the time, if I remember correctly.
Because of the devouring nature of Thorn, it didn't matter if he shot or if yours shot second, because it was going to take his light anyways.
Yeah, the original Thorn, the power of it was able to actually drain Guardians of their light, which is where
because of the Hive magic.
Right, and this is where its intrinsic perk is derived from the version that we have in the game.
Oh yeah, so Jaron dies. His ghost. I don't remember. Did they ever name the ghost?
Oh man, I believe they did, and I don't remember at the moment.
All I know is it was a she. She left. I mean, you're allowed the ghost to leave. Let's say that, and to give a little kid who saw Jaron as a mentor, as a father figure, a message and a challenge.
And that challenge was him.
Oh yes, to defeat him, to become greater than him.
See, Yor had kind of already fallen into the sword logic. If he wasn't going to be the best, then whatever killed him would be deserving of that title.
He had read the books of sorrow, and he knew the history of the Hive and the power of the sword logic that could do. So as Dredgen Yor, corrupted by Hive magics and Hive way, the sword logic to him was the best method. If he failed, he was not strong enough. If he won, he was strong enough.
Well, if he failed, he would have created something that was stronger than him, and that's still the same goal.
Yes. And the kid's name was Shin Malphur, who later became the infamous Renegade Hunter. He's got many names.
Or Shin Malphur, or otherwise known as the infamous man with the golden gun.
Yes.
I don't
believe
believe
the Drifter fears.
I don't believe that he was. I'm not sure if it's accurate to say that he was the first hunter to wield the golden gun, but it is important to note that the archetype, when you summon a golden gun, is of the last
6-shooter version.
Yeah,
yes.
He's the first to wield it in the form that we know today.
Exactly.
Yes. And he uses his new version of the golden gun, this 6-shooter, later to kill Dredgen Yor.
It's 2 shots.
Yes, with a which leads Shen down a very rocky road for his future.
At that point, that is some juicy later lore that we will have to
that is some juicy stuff right there.
Time.
They go very deep into that, and from the season of the Drifter.
Moving past the Jaron Ward and Shin Malphur, Dredgen Yor saga for now, we check back in with the Vanguard, where Andal Brask has just taken the dare. Something hunters are often forced into. They don't really want to take this for fear of winning the dare, in which case they would become one of the Vanguard. As we know now, Andal Brask does win this dare, and he does join the pre-existing Vanguard that are currently active in the tower.
And I believe that would set up as Andal as the Hunter Vanguard, Ikora as... No, Osiris is still Vanguard for Warlocks.
And Saint 14 is leading Titans.
Right.
Yes.
At this particular time in history.
At this particular time. And then this is afterwards. This is when Eris Eris' story jumps back in. Eris Morn, Moda, Omar Aga, which are all hunters, Ariana 3, Toland Shattered as warlocks, and a single titan, Vel Tarlo of the Pilgrim Guard, find Toland the Shattered after he was exiled because they need a guide for the moon because they plan to kill Crato. Unknown to them, though, Toland only agreed because he wanted to learn the Death Singer's dirge.
Yes.
They found Toland. They got him to go to the moon with them, with his little side reason. And they journey into the Hellmouth. And they kind of meet bad ends. All of them, except Toland and, Eris lives, but not in the best way.
6 of them went up. 6 of them went down into the pit. Only
one
one
returned. And a physical body.
Yeah, Toland is more of a purgatory individual
Soul?
right now. Yeah.
Toland is a crotchety old ghost grandpa. That's what Toland is.
You know,
right
his
now.
ghost was insane. His ghost
Was
was
he?
actually
I never
insane.
really heard anything about his
So
ghost.
if you go and
Yeah,
Shadow
his ghost was
Keep
just
now
like him.
and you do the Lost Ghost missions, you can actually find his ghost near Fogoth. And it speaks to you, and that ghost is insane.
Okay, I gotta go for that one next time I find one.
Let's just put it this way: it makes Drifter's ghost look like a fairy.
Oh yes. So Eris, she's stuck down there for quite a while.
Oh yeah, she gets. Eris lives while her fire team is dead. She gets kind of lost in the tunnels because she's kind of trapped, and doesn't leave for a few decades. I believe it was considered a few decades. What was it? Vel Tarlo had his light ripped from him.
Omar, that was Omar.
Omar,
that
sorry,
was Omar.
They die in very gruesome ways. I can't remember them all. Omar gets his light ripped from him by a wizard. Ariana 3 gets sacrificed to some death singers by Toland, so he learned the song and transcended to his weird little corporeal fireball thing.
Vel is brutally slain by Alakul, the Dark Blade,
With one of their giant axes.
and
Moda, I believe, was killed by Thrall. Legions of them.
Sai is killed by Omnigul.
Oh yes.
Or at least she went after Omnigul.
And that is
either
the scream
Omnigul
that you
or
hear
the
whenever
heart.
Omnigul is nearby. It's Sai's scream. If
Really?
you
What?
listen at the beginning of Shadowkeep, the ghost notes, Omnigul has screamed, and Eris mentions that the scream sounds just as it did the day Omnigul struck her down.
Okay, interesting. I gotta listen to that again.
Yeah, so Omnigul has literally taken Sai's scream and uses it
Oh
to
my
put fear
God.
into her enemies.
Whew,
Oh
that
my
is.
God.
I
Wow.
like that.
Oh my god.
And it is interesting to note that the voice actor for Eris Morn also voiced Omnigul.
That woman's got a
Love you,
range.
Morla.
She does. She also did a lot of
She did a lot of the
Just the
Hive sound
natural
effects
Hive sounds
prior to
and some of the
voicing Eris.
guns for the Hive too, because they just threw her voice through a filter and stuff. It's impressive, I gotta say. Afterwards, Eris is trapped down there. Everyone's dead. Toland is in the Ascendant Plane, Purgatory, and they'll be down there for a while. Back to Earth. Dredge and Yor just killed a few Guardians in the Crucible, including, what was it, Thalor?
Valor, yeah.
And it's also noted that Yor killed Pahanin from the Vault of Glass team as well. He was an insane hunter, though. He was not really doing much.
Yeah,
He really
we
likes
should-
his cephalopods.
I love Pahanin because he loves squids.
It
I
should
love
be
Pahanin.
noted that
He is the hunter.
It hasn't been outright confirmed, but it's believed that Yor killed Pahanin because of the Cloak of Dredge and Yor's flavor text from Destiny 1.
Yes, it's not directly said, but it is highly implied to the point where
Right,
I myself would confidently say that Dredge and Yor killed Pahanin.
Yeah, it's one of those flavor texts that you get in the game where it's like, yeah, they're basically saying it without saying it. I feel like.
Yeah. Dredge and Yor goes on this conquest. After killing these Guardians, and Shin Malfur at this point is basically a full-grown adult. He's making a name for himself, hunting Dredgeonyor still, and they meet at Dwindler's Ridge.
And this is what it's all about for hunters. Shin reclaiming their foothold in the wilds and in their history. Ignites his golden gun and puts him down.
And my favorite part about that entire story is the last thing he says to Dredgeonyor. It's noted that Yor actually did not move when Shin drew on him. Shin it's literally beautifully described the way the golden gun formed, as it's like the anger erupted down his arm into the cannon as the golden gun, and he fired two solar bullets into Yor, and Yor fell, and then he walked over to Yor and looked down at his body, and he just says, "Yours, not mine," and fires one final shot, which "yours, not mine" is a infamous quote from Jaron Ward. Actually, it was something
very poetic in a way.
Yes, considering the name of the gun that put Yor down is the last word.
Oh yeah, Yor is dead.
Sorry.
Guardians freed from his tyranny.
Hunter got excited.
Yeah, I get it. It's very interesting. I like it as a warlock side because of the implications and stuff.
Is this how you feel?
Which I can
when you
go
talk
into
about
another
Osiris?
day. Whoa, speaking of Osiris. This is also around the time where Osiris's teachings kind of become the volatile I was talking about earlier in the city. He is obsessed with the Vex. He believes the Vex are the final problem for the city, the biggest threat. And his teachings say that the traveler is not good, the city is stupid, and the Vex need to be watched. And the speaker does not have this kind of rhetoric in a city where it's the last safe place on Earth. He doesn't want this destroying, causing a civil war, another faction war. So what he does is he exiles Osiris, burns his books, banishes and forbids any talk of Osiris speak in the city.
Bit paranoid, in my opinion.
I see it more as it's a bad move, but it is a calculated move.
I have my own thoughts on the Curse of Osiris comics.
Yeah.
Due to their placement in the lore and the controversy on their release. But suffice it to say that despite whatever inconsistencies those brought with what we previously understood, Osiris his teachings were pulling too much interest away from the people that kept the city running smoothly every day, and that simply wasn't feasible with literally the last safe place for humanity. So
correct.
He was warned, and he did not heed that warning, so he was banished, and Ikora took his place.
Mm-hmm. And he goes to Mercury for the Infinite Forest, and I guess as a final checkup, final little thing from the speaker asks Saint 14 to look for Osiris, and Saint 14 gets the call right after headbutting the Kell of Devils to death.
That's actually the dent. That's actually the dent that you see on the exotic helm of Saint 14. That is from him headbutting the Kell to death.
Again, I love those little nods to the lore on the armor.
It is
and
so cool.
Things that you can actually wear as a guardian.
Yeah, but before Saint 14 goes to find Osiris, Twilight Gap kind of happens. I mean, it doesn't kind of, it happens. The fallen houses of Winter, Kings, and Devil all attack the city, with the House of Wolves coming in from the asteroid belt. But the wolves were stopped by the reef. Marasov's orders, and the reef wars began over there, stopping the wolves from aiding the 3 other houses. It's widely believed that if the 4 houses together fought the city would have fallen.
Oh yes.
And this
That's
is the
possible.
first time the city at large really sees any movement from the Awoken. And
Right.
Yes.
being that it's such in a dramatic fashion, Mara really achieves her goal here of setting herself and her people up as a force to be reckoned with, even though they were on our side.
Oh, yeah. But thanks to her efforts, the city was saved, and this is when Saint 14 begins his crusade against the Fallen, and ending with the headbutt of the Kell of Devils, leaving them without a Kell for decades to come. Afterwards, he gets his little, he gets a direct line from the speaker telling him to go find Osiris. And Saint 14 ventures into the Infinite Forest. And it is, I mean, the time inside the Infinite Forest can be different for depending on who it is. But it's
Correct.
believed he fought Vex inside the forest for years. If you ever do his little side quest to get the perfect paradox, his resting place is literally a room filled almost to the ceiling with dead Vex.
You know how
Yeah.
opulent the Leviathan looks with the purple wine everywhere? It just covers the entire Leviathan. It's
Inside
that,
Callus's throne
but
room.
Vex.
Yeah. And
yeah.
the only way to Vex beat him was they actually built a mind designed to drain him of his light, and he still killed them all before it was through.
Yes, they created a mind specifically to attune to his light wavelength, so that mind could not be used on any other Guardian. And it took them decades to calculate just a way to stop him alone.
By himself.
So they still realistically could not do that for any Guardian
Yeah,
at the
so
moment.
rest easy. The Vex still can't sap our light at large.
Yes.
Right.
Unless you decide to venture into the Infinite Forest for a few decades. And while fighting Vex.
So the Titan have lost their Vanguard. The Warlocks have a new Vanguard, who the speaker is alluded to not really having much faith in. Ikora was kind of new to this role, despite her being experienced.
She was a stand-in for quite some time beforehand, though.
Yeah. So given, and this is just after Twilight Gap, so you have a lot of discord. The faction wars end up really coming to a head with the Concordat being banished for their extremism.
And this is when
Yes. They had some very, very extreme views, so they were banished from the city as well. This was a time of a lot of banishing. The Concordat was banished, and to make sure the consensus stayed balanced, they needed another faction to take its place. So they voted in the Future War Cult because it was a smaller faction at the time, but they believed they wouldn't cause too much problems because they were so busy with themselves to really do anything to disrupt the way the city was operating.
Not disruptive, yet they have a little simulation machine that drives everyone who uses it mad.
Yeah. And pretty aptly sees other timelines.
Yeah, no. If it could be used without driving everyone who used it crazy, it'd be a very useful weapon.
Oh, yes, it would. There's small flavor text, them describing the Vex winning against the solar system, the Red Legion attacking, the Traveler leaving, all kinds of different situations and different timelines which, I mean, it made them quite paranoid. That's why they're called the Future War Cult. Come on. They're preparing for all future wars by looking at all different timelines to make sure to be prepared for any possible situation at any moment.
The problem is they cry wolf so often that it's hard to actually pin down a moment where they will be right. Otherwise, you'll just live your life in paranoia.
Oh yeah.
So they do predict
Right.
the Red War, but the problem is they've predicted countless other wars that still haven't or never will come to pass in our timeline. So they weren't really taken seriously.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah.
That's. I mean, it's a decent reason to pull them up to the consensus. Less problems for a time of quite a lot of stress for the city, I would say. But while the city is worried about their own balance of powers, it's Cade 6, I would say, kind of becomes more notable. He takes the Vanguard dare with Andal Brask, and Andal loses by getting killed by Tannix the Scarred.
Yep.
Which is interesting because Tannix apparently has been killed multiple times, but has come back each time.
The original Vanguard dare between the two, the one that Andal won, was whoever killed Tannix had to become the Hunter Vanguard. So Andal got the killing shot, and he had to station himself in the tower, which for us hunters is like, I don't want to say
that was a
death sentence.
that event was a bit ago to where
Right.
we're at now. But yeah, the loser
Right.
was the whoever killed Tannix, and I mean it was a bad situation all around. But to Cade, he was like an inside man. He knew Andal. He was friends with Andal, so he saw Andal as like a way to get into the Vanguard, getting information, good stuff. And it did work for quite some time.
Yep.
But Andal became more Vanguard-like as time went on, and Cade was not too happy about that. And eventually, he challenged him to the dare once again. And this time, Andal dies for good.
Yep. Rest in peace.
Yep. So that makes Cade the new Hunter Vanguard, which in Forsaken he says is the best dare he's ever lost.
Yep.
I mean,
Twice.
and here we go. The last event before our Guardian wakes up is Hive seeders were discovered on Earth for the first time. And these seeders are important because, like the name suggests, they seed areas with a small hive fortress, which allow them to grow. There's a few seeders in the Cosmodrome, which allowed the hive to spread across the Earth, and this raises some flags for the city. They don't do much, but they do watch out for the hive, because the hive, after Mare Imbrium, were a bedtime story to keep children from doing too much trouble. They were the boogeyman that lived on the moon, never coming to Earth, but now they were on Earth.
And now the pieces are set, and we are ready to bring our Guardian. But next week.
Yes.
Next time.
We went a little long on the today's episode.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of events in the City Age that need a little more explaining to really give background context to future events, because the City Age really sets up a lot.
Yeah, you need to know where
everything that comes forward,
coming from, before you can properly put down where you're going.
Oh yeah. So next time we will cover the beginning of Destiny 1, the mission where our Guardian is revived by Dinklebot.
RIP.
Yeah, too bad, Dinklebot. Well, we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you for joining us. I've been HipNuts.
I've been LostAngelofHavik.
And I have been Vulshok.
We'll see you next week, Guardians.
Couple of housekeeping notes before we go. Here's where you can catch us online. You can follow us on Twitter at DYKDestiny. You can like our page on Facebook and follow it at Did You Know Destiny. And you can follow us on Instagram at did_you_know_destiny. And also, if you're interested in any merch, we have some merch up at www.teespring.com/stores/DYKDestiny. All right, guys, that's it. Take care, Guardians.